thank you, by the way. Thanks for doing this, and welcome to, I guess it's
No,
Building
cool.
Bridges. I don't know what number this is called, like number 7 maybe, or 8? Something around there. I've done a few now
Mm,
this year.
you've done a few, yeah.
How do I pronounce your name exactly?
Rashed.
Rashed,
Like a
okay.
garden shed. Rashed.
Yeah. I was about to say Rahed, so Rashed. Nice. Awesome.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I
Are
haven't heard
you,
that one.
where are you from, dude?
Lebanese background.
Okay,
But
cool.
yeah, I came to Australia when I was 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't sound Australian, so I'm guessing maybe your parents have got an accent.
Yeah, I spoke Lebanese with my parents into my teenage years and my adult years, so I kind of still had that, kind of thing going there.
Mm.
That's probably why I don't speak fully Australian. Yeah, because I'm Lebanese and I spoke it till I still speak it, but not that much since I moved out about 2 years ago. Yeah, that's probably why.
Uh, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I'm 34. Had to
Sweet, man.
think for a second. 34? I was born in 83.
Cool. We're
What about you?
we're kind of in the same age. I'm 37, and
Oh, really? I thought
I'm
you were younger.
yeah, no, I'm getting on. It's probably why I'm a bit more bit less energy than I used to have 5 years ago.
Oh, you look great, man.
Sweet, thank you. Um, yeah, right. Let's. What have I got here? That's kind of meet and greet. But thanks
Yeah.
for doing this, man. I appreciate it, and we'll we'll dig in terms of singing. One thing I noticed about your speaking voice is it's not typical. It's quite it's quite airy. You know, there's a different quality to it than would be average, I guess you'd say. Where's your starting point as a singer?
The breathy voice. So I just want to clarify, like, I had that since I was young. So when I listen to my old videos of me as a child, like home videos that my dad used to take, because my dad used to like to make videos and stuff, I actually sound like this even before my voice broke. So I sound a bit like that sort of a sound to my voice. I do notice that sometimes I can sort of kind of like take it out. If you notice, if I'm kind of taking, I don't know, to me, I feel like I'm removing a tiny bit. Sometimes I can do that, but
Mm,
it's not always natural, you could say. So it's sort of, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
it's
but I do have that
interesting.
tonality, yeah, in
So
my
you know,
voice.
some people have like vocal cords that kind of they can be like a little bit not they can be a little bit when they come together they don't necessarily come together completely seamlessly, so you get a little
Yeah.
bit of that kind of texture in the sound. And
Okay.
I've got another friend who has some of this, and but because typically when someone like myself speaks, it sounds kind of average in the sense that there's not really any different type of quality to it. But you do get some people that have a different type of quality. Brett Manning was talking about this once and saying that some people's vocal cords are slightly like bowed, or one of them can be slightly off, so that as they close, like there's a little bit of a space even when they
Mm,
vibrate. This type of thing. Um, yeah,
yeah.
have you ever had an ENT like look down there and
No.
see it?
I was gonna do one a while ago, like maybe a year, 2 years or something ago, because I hurt my voice when I was doing emceeing. I was emceeing shows. I used to do dance shows, like a
Yeah.
dance. I was a dancer, but I used to also MC the show, and I just used to shout a lot, like too much. And then I think I'd been practicing extra that week because I found this new technique and I was excited. And then I just started shouting in the show, and then I just felt something wrong, and my I lost like some of my range. My voice went lower. It actually went deeper, and I lost about half an octave or an octave from the top of my voice. And it actually voluntarily like stopped talking for a few days on purpose, and I was using my phone to dictate, and that's the only time it's ever happened. Um, and yeah, that was like a big bit of a hit. But then it came back, like, because I was going on holidays at the same time it happened to Fiji, and then I sort of rested though to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 days where I sort of spoke kind of absolute minimum. And then I went to a doctor to see and to get a referral for the ENT because you got to go to the doctor first. And the doctor said, "You sound fine." Like by that time, my voice was kind of back, and but I still felt like it was still recovering. About maybe 2 weeks in, but then he didn't give me a referral. Oh no, he did because I pushed him, and he gave me the referral, but I didn't end up doing it because he said to me, "Oh, like you're speaking, you sound fine," and stuff like that. So I left it, and then yeah, it kind of just completely went away and kind of healed up.
Sweet, man. And
So I never actually went to an ENT, but I might at some point because it is pretty expensive. But
oh
I don't
yeah, I
feel
don't know where
like,
it's where you are. We can kind of go for free in the UK.
oh really? Oh,
Um,
okay, it's like
but
$250 Australian, so that's about 120 pounds or something. 150
yeah,
pounds. Yeah, like you know what I mean. Unless I need to, I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
really dying to go.
So what did
And
you have
because I
like?
had a friend go, as well, and my friend actually lost her voice. She's like a karaoke host sort of thing. She works a lot. She's lost her voice a couple of times, and she went to the ENT, and the ENT just told her you need to rest, and that was it.
Yeah, because the thing is, whatever it is, unless you're going to go and have surgery, which is uncommon, most of the time it's going to be therapy and like if it's caused by technique, it'll be technique and therapy, and then it'll be rest, basically. Unless you've got like someone like Adele's got so much money that she can just go pay the best surgeon in the world to put a you know microscope and tiny knives in there to just do whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I was paranoid that something was wrong with my voice. This is when I was a garbage singer, and uh, and he looked down there. He was like, "No, your vocal cords are fine." So I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess there's nothing wrong with my voice."
Yeah.
I was convinced like there must be something wrong because I can't sing high. It can't possibly be.
Ah.
It can't possibly be me or my fault. It has to be something wrong in there that's like stopping me. Yeah. Anyway, this was
Yeah.
years ago. So
Mm.
uh, what was your starting point as a singer,
Yeah.
and where were you at
So
when you started?
my starting point, my parents used to sing. My dad used to sing in the house a lot. My mom used to sing a bit, but my dad was pretty good. So I guess hearing him in the house all the time, he was always very happy singing, sort of wake up and he'll sing Arabic music, and he sang really well. And I think that was like you could say my influence without even knowing it. Like, you know how your parents teach you, but it's like implicit teaching. You're just copying behavior. So I guess I kind of got interested with that, but I didn't really get a big, massive bang with music until I was about 15 and I heard R&B. So like R&B was on the radio at that time, and it was kind of like early Boys to Men, Drew Hill, Cisco, and then 2 or 3 years later, Craig David. And when they came out, I heard that music, like I felt something new. So I knew I always liked music because I listened to Arabic music growing up a lot, and it's really nice. It's Arabic's got a lot of similarities to R&B actually in its complexity. But I also listened to Bee Gees and ABBA because my parents used to listen to them. But other than that, I didn't really have any English music influences until I was 15 or so and I heard R&B. So then at that stage, I quickly got into it. I found I was quick to learn lyrics. Like maybe that was a skill. Now I think back about it, think about it again. I quickly learned lyrics and kind of the melody and stuff, but I didn't know how good or bad I was necessarily. In my mind, I thought I was good. I thought I was good because I could memorize the lyrics and I knew I knew the flow of the song. I thought like the sections and stuff, and I thought I was good. And so I made recordings. So these are my recordings that are on my YouTube, as my before and afters. I have a whole playlist of before and afters, and I was approximately between 16 and 20 at the time I recorded those. So you can hear from them exactly what I sounded like. So in some songs, I'm actually off key the entire time, like
Mm.
entirely off key. And these are studio recorded, as in home studio, because I was good with software and stuff, so I learned how to record at home. These are studio recorded, so they weren't like live one take. I I didn't realize that I used to be out of key. So What would happen was I'd particularly, when I listened back to the recordings, when I'd sing Craig David, I didn't go out of key so much. So I think because he was more in my comfortable range than the other artists like Cisco and Boyz II Men who have really high ranges. They go up above G all the way to C, you know, and
Mm.
back then I didn't realize that that's what was happening, and I didn't really have a falsetto like a good. I didn't really know how to use my falsetto in that, like to go up into it like that, other than maybe an occasional note, not actually sing phrases up there.
Yeah.
So I used to actually just go off key. So I used to just change the key, drop the key down, but not into a harmony, into just being off key.
Mm.
So that was my starting point, being an off key singer. I had no vibrato. I just had like a shaky goat vibrato. Um, I couldn't do like I couldn't like hold a straight note out. You know, all my notes sounded slightly shaky. Yeah, I couldn't. I didn't know what things were. Like I didn't understand the difference between the elements of singing, like vibrato,
Mm.
runs, pitch, rhythm. I didn't really know none of that stuff. And I had an experience where I met a singer, and then he got busy with work, but I thought he didn't want to sing with me anymore. This was at Australian Idol. And then when he didn't want to sing with me, he had recordings of us jamming together, and I could hear myself being bossy in the recordings. And I thought he didn't want to sing with me because I was being an idiot. And I could hear how good he was in the recording, better than I could hear it in person for some reason. I could hear the difference between me and him better. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Sometimes
I
it
ended up
takes sometimes it takes listening to a comparison of you versus another singer, or I say versus obviously, um, and you hear it more, you hear it clearer. I had the same thing today. I was watching a lesson back just briefly that I did today, just before I sent a link out to the student, and and I noticed things straight away that I hadn't picked up in the lesson. When you're in the moment and you're in the now, it can be very hard to pick up on everything. Um,
yeah,
yeah, this is a thing. Just going
totally.
back to what you said, one thing I kind of distinguish with singers, and tell me if you kind of agree with this in terms of when people say they struggle to match pitches, you often get singers who can match lower pitches very easily, and as they go higher, they struggle. And it's not necessarily because they can't hear what they're trying to do; it's because they don't really have the coordination in here yet to kind of get themselves there. So they sing it flat because there's nothing, they don't know what to do to get up there, versus
Yeah,
singers who try and match pitches, even low pitches in chest, and they'll miss. Those singers are actually, I found, relatively rare. It's usually the case that there's, like yourself, singers who could match pitches lower down, and they go up higher and they kind of lose their way and they're not really sure why, and they kind of say, oh, I can't, I'm tone deaf. But once you really
yeah,
start testing them, it's not so much
yeah.
that sometimes. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, on that comment, in reality, I mean, it's all a scale. It's all a scale. Like people say tone deaf. I mean, that's a very black and white term.
Yeah.
It really all is a scale. On all my students, I see this pattern. Like it's everything's a scale, and some students they sound like you might think that they're horrible, but then because they can't match pitch, but then you find that they do something else really well. Like maybe they have amazing placement of their tone, and it sounds like professional, but they can't match pitch when you give them the pitch on the first go. It might take them, then they need to train that. Like they're a complete beginner in that, like a 1 out of 10, but then they're like a 9 out of 10 in their tone. Whereas others are like 10 out of 10. They hit the note every time, they hit it right, but they sound nasal or something like that. And you need to correct the placement. Yeah.
This is so
Um,
true. This is so true. I've had this numerous times with students where their strengths are counter to my strengths and their weaknesses are my strengths. And I think, why is it that I got something like it seems so not easy to me, and then for them they're
yeah.
struggling, and it's the reverse, the opposite types of problems for them. It's it can be mind-boggling, this type of thing at times.
Yeah. And on the thing about you were saying they're not really tone deaf, it's really they don't have the coordination in their throat yet, like to go high. I w- I will agree on that they don't know how to go high yet, but ideally, if you know how to match pitch, you'll sing it in the lower octave. at
Yeah, they
least.
do.
Then at least it's still musical.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go off key, it shows a lack of understanding of pitch and key.
Yeah, I know what
You
you
know,
mean.
yeah. So I guess I was trying to emphasize that I didn't have an understanding of key, enough understanding of key to be like, okay, this is too high for me. I'm gonna sing it in the lower octave, which is what I do now because now I'm totally aware. If something is too high, like I'm singing in a female, whatever, or a super high male, I'll adjust it. And yeah, what was I up to? So I met this guy, and then I thought he didn't want to sing with me. I heard his voice on the recording, and I realized he was better than me, and I thought I was being arrogant and by like kind of trying to direct sometimes the jam session we were having. And then anyway, I went and sought out other singers to jam with because of that experience.
Mm.
And I ended up meeting a girl who taught me, who was a pianist, and she wanted to harmonize with me, and I didn't know what a harmony was. And she said, "Oh, it's just two notes up in the scale." And I'm like, "What's a scale?"
Oh
So I
dear.
had no instrumental experience. At this point, I had no music theory. This was all. I just thought singing was listening to a song and singing it back. You know, my parents didn't play instruments. There was no musical sort of stuff like this. Like my dad just sang nicely. There was no musical background other than just singing by ear.
Mm.
So she introduced me to that, and then this is what I'm getting to. But I thought it's interesting to tell the story. The guy ended up coming back, and he did want to jam with me. Like 6 months later, he goes, "I was just busy. I told you." And I was like, "Oh, I thought you didn't like me because I was like an idiot on the recordings." So anyway, when she told me about scales and harmony and stuff, and I went and looked it up, and then I go, "Oh, maybe I should learn piano." And then and then I realized that, oh, it's just this is theory, and I was quick to learn theory, like chord structures and scales and stuff. So I was like, "Oh, why don't I learn guitar? I've always wanted to learn guitar," because in the back of my mind, I was told that somewhere I was told, "Oh, you can't learn guitar if you didn't start when you were 5," or something like that. Someone had told me that along the way, and I'd sort of like put it away, even though whenever I heard like flamenco guitar or classical guitar or like acoustic, I always felt drawn to that.
Mm.
But this is when I was 20 years old, approximately, by the way, this story, 18, 20. And so what happened? So I was learning, then I got a guitar, and then I ended up leaving piano and just doing guitar. So I'd only learned like basic chords on piano. I wasn't like playing a song or something. And then what happened then? Then as I was learning kind of the scales on the piano, uh, I started something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but oh yeah, it was about key. So I realized that melodies all fit within a key. So when I was learning about the theory on this is on just like websites, and then I realized that like, from that I go, okay, so every song I'm singing is actually just in a key. So all I need to do is find the correct notes that fit in that key. And this is the very first time that I'd ever had any visual representation of singing.
Yeah.
So I went to the keyboard, and I don't know if I had the sheet music because I bought all the PV, the PVG books, the
Um.
piano, vocal, guitar. So it's just pretty
Okay.
much the sheet music, but it's got the chord boxes on top.
Okay.
That's
Cool.
the guitar chord boxes.
Yeah.
I'd show you, but I don't want to move the table. And
Yeah. No.
so I found the notes. So like I learned how to read the staff or whatever. I found the notes on the piano just for I long for the warmth of days gone by. So I just da, 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 those jumps. Da, da, da. And for the first time ever, I found that I can play them on the piano, and then I tried to match them with my voice over and over, and I did like within I don't know half an hour or something. Practiced it for an hour or whatever, played it back to my sister, and she goes, "That's the first time you ever sound good." But when I played it, I knew it sounded good. Like
Mm.
something I knew it was accurate. Like I could tell that when I played those pitches and I sang them back, I could tell something was different that I was missing in the past. And that was my aha moment. Oh,
Uh.
singing is just it's just like maths. It's these numbers. and you just have to match them accurately every time to
Yeah,
sound good. I did that. I recorded it, listened to it. I was like, wow, it actually sounds nice. And that was my aha moment.
that's
And
awesome,
it's
man.
just been
You know,
going from
when,
there. Yeah.
yeah, when you say it's, you just have to match them accurately and precisely. I've mentioned this a few times in videos recently, just saying, look, it's not so hard to get it right once, but it is hard to get it right every single time and be a very consistent singer. Um, and and that's the challenge, which kind of take us on to the next bit, really, because that ties into consistent work and consistent practice. I picked up one of your videos recently talking about this, and I felt like we had a lot of common ground, because my my view is it's going to be the work ethic at the end of the day that's going to drag you through towards, sounding professional versus just sounding okay. And how, I guess the question is, what are some strategies and ideas that you have in terms of motivating students and helping people to get that motivation to put in the time every day, over a long period to see the real results? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah. I like to use numbers. So you know how you say consistent? That's great. It's a great word. Like we kind of know what it means. It means doing stuff on a regular basis, you know? But sometimes I like to give the goal in terms of numbers. So it ties in with what we were saying about matching notes. The goal of a song is to match every single note that happens in that song. So there might be I like using the numbers, there might be 300 notes in that song, and you have to match every one accurately. So you got to match about 90 to 95% to sound like a professional, because even the professionals go off, a little bit. Even on their good days, right? They go off a little bit. And then you get the occasional 100% time when it's like magical, extra magical. So I just like to look at it like you're progressing towards that. And every time you practice, you're getting closer to those 300 notes. Every time you train a phrase or a chorus or a verse, or just even an interval within a phrase, or just even one note of the interval, and you're getting a tiny percentage closer to the goal of executing a song with 90 to 100% accuracy. So when I give it to them in that way, maybe during a lesson, I might say that at some point, or I might say it like, excuse me, I might say it maybe when they've learned a phrase. So after we've done the practical, students are different. Like sometimes some students want to know how it works before you do practical. And some students aren't like that. Some students don't ask any questions and they're just ready to do practical. And then they learn from that. And then maybe they want some clarification about how it's going to be future wise. So when people do want clarification, and even if they don't, sometimes I might give them that clarification because I'll see I want to show them that I appreciate how hard they've worked just to get a phrase, because you might spend 20 minutes on "I long for," like it's not a joke. You literally, without the vibrato, you literally might do that with some people, because going "I long for some people is super hard.
Yeah,
So
I had a student today. We spent probably 30 to 40 minutes going through just the first like four or five notes of the chorus over and over and over, and
yeah,
that's like it's. And I've done that myself for many years. But when people see the end result, they don't necessarily take into account all of this, all of this detail orientated work, breaking down like everything down into simple building blocks and all this stuff. Because
yeah,
you're basically going from a finished product, like zooming out, zooming in, zooming in, zooming in. You're taking every little thing apart, trying to get it better and better, and then zooming back out when you perform and basically crossing your fingers and hoping it all works. But
yeah,
yeah, this
exactly. That's great. Yeah,
this is such a key thing for people to understand, because it might take some time. A lot of the time, you've got to be
yeah,
kind of tedious work in a sense. I've found like tedious, not necessarily in a bad way, but it can be quite God, like how many times do we have to go over this?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So as you go over it, you go over it with a variety of ways to meet every person's needs, and that's what our skill is. How do you teach a song in a couple of ways so that you are hitting the person's weak spots from every angle, you could say. So I long for could be hit with by taking the words out. Mm, by even closing your mouth. Da, 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 taking away the words and just using like a consonant like that. You could use the piano. You could just go one note at a time. You could just go two notes at a time and then combine these two notes, then these two notes, and then do the transition between those two notes. So all those things are strategies I use to teach the phrases. But yeah, back to the point that we're talking about. How do you get someone to be consistent and stuff? I guess you explain to them exactly what you just explained. How it really is about zooming in. Here's the song. Here's the performance. It's 4 minutes. Let's zoom in to this 3 seconds. Let's work on that 3 seconds for an hour. Let's work on the next 3 seconds for an hour, and then maybe 100 hours later, you sound okay.
I like that, man. That's real talk, and there's a lot of truth there. And if you think about it, you do this. People do the same thing with other instruments, but they don't. It's just taken for granted with other instruments, as in it seems seen as normal. But for some reason, with singing, it's not seen as normal. But with guitar, it's the same. You might break a section of a song down into just into small chunks and work on one motion, and then you work on the next motion, and then you work on combining those two motions into one little package, and then you carry on. Especially with complicated music, I remember sitting down learning Tommy Emmanuel acoustic stuff, like some of his easier songs, and sitting there for probably 3 weeks trying to breaking everything down and putting it all together, and at the end of that 3 weeks, it wasn't like his, but it was getting there, and it's seen as much more normal in instruments. So I've been covering this recently. This idea of, look, we need to actually take on board a lot of these instrumentalists. They actually know a lot of this stuff for some reason better than singers, and they understand it more, and it's more acceptable for some reason. We need to kind of take that on board as learning singers.
I love that you've done this, and this is a great segue into, I think it's on our topic, song-based versus song-based learning, which is just a term that I'm kind of made up or I'm using,
Yeah.
versus the traditional kind of like scale-based, yeah, versus scale-based learning.
Yeah, let's do
So
that. Let's do that, and then we'll do the second section after this. So yeah, I've got here
yeah,
scales versus songs, and
yeah.
what
Okay, great.
let
I'll,
let's
I'll just I'll
let's
just open that up.
yeah, let's start
Yeah.
here, because one thing I liked about what you just said, and you can comment on this, is you talked about you could take a phrase and actually kind of create like a
An
scale,
exercise.
an exercise out of a
Yeah.
out of a phrase, and in a sense from there you're kind of working backwards towards scales rather than from scales into songs, which I like the idea of.
Yeah. So you and Martin Miller, I think his name, Martin Miller, were talking about it, or I don't know if it was you and Martin Miller. I think you said it. I can't remember. Where you said there was a teacher, or I don't know if you said it or one of your interviewees said it. Sorry,
Don't
you said there was a teacher who like rarely uses the same exercise twice, even though they're doing scale kind of exercises, arpeggios, etc., to train people. They had so many because they believed that, oh, like people need variety and melodies are varied, so it's better to do a variety of exercises to train your brain and your throat, your voice to do different things. And that's that's kind of like a middle ground. And what I say, and I like that because it shows me the correct. uh, I sound a bit arrogant on this, but I really believe it so strongly because it's just done. The way it's worked for me has been incredible, and for people that I train, when you're training a song, it it's like the instruments. You need to spend so much time on the specific techniques of those intervals that occur in the song. the specific fingerings. It's no different with the voice. You need to train that specific interval that happens in I long for on those specific words. So if you're training a scale, you might not do that interval in the scale. So when you come to do the song, you are a beginner. You really are. When it comes to that song, you will sound average, and you will have to, at best, relearn it from the beginning. Teach
Yeah.
yourself that interval. At best, at worst, um, um, yeah, I think you get my flow. So,
Yeah, totally.
so that's why I really advocate song based, because you said it before as well in your videos that a scale is just a melody. It's no different, right? So do re mi fa sol la ti do ti la so fa mi re do. It's no different from I long for the warmth of days gone by. Oh, 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 oh. The feeling in here, it's the same feeling. They're just, it's different patterns, the maths side
Yeah.
of it. So when we do a scale, what we're doing limited, our patterns are limited to what our teacher has decided we should practice. The 10 scales they give us, or whatever, the 20, even if they give us 100, they're still not the actual goal. What is our final goal? Our final goal is to create a set list of songs that we intend to perform to our audience, or to perform for ourselves for the sheer pleasure of it. So let's say in our lifetime we want to amass 200 songs or something that we do comfortably or whatever, right? So isn't doesn't it make more sense to take every song, break every song down into tiny pieces, and use those songs as exercises to train your abilities, to train your note matching, to train your vibrato, to train your ability to change lyrics, to train those like little quick slides that happen, like, oh, oh, like those little things that happen in songs that comment, um, sometimes, either like the times, like it's like a quick slide. Times. It's not just sometimes. It doesn't just go straight to that note. It actually slides from the times into that note. For example, like those things, they're not on sheet music. You can't train them when you do scales. So I call them slides. So, but it's just an interval. It's only one interval, like from one note to the next. Kind of, it's not like a slide, like it's not that kind of a
Yeah,
slide.
yeah.
um, all that stuff, it's so specific to the song that you're singing. And there is crossover, of course, because many songs have similarities in their melodies, in their range, in the words, they're all the same language. So that's the crossover. And that's why we can learn new songs fairly quickly, because we can learn a new song depending on the level that what we're currently at. That's the level that we'll have on that new song fairly quickly, because we've already done that couple 100 hours or whatever, 1,000 hours of work on our voice. So when we learn a new song, we're we're taking in, we're using all that, and it's all there because we've learnt 3 dozen other songs, and maybe a dozen of them have a similar intervals, etc. Or similar range, similar part in our falsetto, a similar part in our low voice, a
Yep.
similar vibrato, a similar tempo, etc. So so that's why I really feel that using the scales, using the song-based approach and just using phrases and making phrases into exercises. By exercise, I just mean you repeat the hell out of it, you slow it down, you gradually speed it up, you break it apart further. Maybe you break it one note at a time, which is just a form of super slowing it down even more by breaking it one note at a time. So like uh, I long for could just be I. So you just do that until you get that right down, until you get that perfect. You might extend it out for 10 seconds. If some people have like shaky voices, like I long, and they're on pitch, but their voice is kind of shaky. So they need to learn how to smooth their voice out. By like extending the note and focusing on getting it smooth and taking out like the wavering if they shake. I had a couple of students who do that, like very shaky kind of a voice. Um, make a clear distinction between vibrato and straight tones,
Yeah.
so it has that beauty in the sound. Yeah.
Let
Um,
me let
I'll
me
let you
cut
ask
in.
your
So
question. Yeah.
I my view on some of the things that you're talking about is most of the stuff I'm in complete agreement with. I view it as scales in a sense as broad singing skills, and you're absolutely right. They aren't specific singing skills. So just because you can sing scales very well, once you go to a phrase in a song which has, maybe 8 different vowels, I say 8, in combination, a bunch of different vowels, a bunch of different consonants, all combined in a new, unique way that you've never done before, with a bunch of different pitches, blah, 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 whatever it is. Like, those broad singing skills don't just translate into that phrase. You can't do it. And I liked what you said when you said about finding a middle ground. This is the challenge: is finding a way to make things simple enough, break them down simply to make them simple enough so they're easily digestible for somebody, and then helping them rebuild into the complicated thing, which is singing that phrase, and applying some of the basic ideas, but ultimately they've got to sing the phrase and they've got to do it well. And there are plenty of skills that you don't learn in a scale.
Yeah.
Vowel transitions and using various consonants, or consonants that start with air, like a h, or unvoiced consonants like a t, this type of thing. Like, you don't work on those in scales typically. So when you have them in a song right in the middle of your range, what are you going to do? On a vowel that you don't like, what are you going to do?
With a
This
new
this
rhythm.
yeah, this makes it tricky. And I think that both of these ways can be applied as long as the teacher's aware of this middle ground. They have an understanding of the broader skill set a singer needs and the specific skill sets a singer needs for each song.
Yeah.
And this is hard for, this is something that takes time to really cultivate and understand. It's not an exact science, it's an art, really, in a sense. But recently I've been much more in trying to find this middle ground for people. I've got many students who sing scales really well, but as soon as we go to apply,
Yeah.
they don't quite do it right, and so I have to literally sit in this middle ground with them and try and get them to
Okay.
simplify it and all this stuff. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember, like, back a while ago when we were chatting last year, and we had this sense of, you know, I like people to know that I'm not somebody who's saying that you have to learn this with just scales, because it's not the case at all. And as I've got better, I've certainly valued a lot more this middle ground, and how do we apply it directly into music and all this stuff. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer, but I do think that this middle ground is so key, because you have to find a way to get good at singing, not at scales. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Okay. I like how you're saying this middle ground thing, and let's clarify that with what maybe we might mean by a middle ground. So let me say it. A lot of people mistake my song-based method to mean I'm just singing songs from beginning to end, and that's the training.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not the training. So here's the middle ground, how it ties off actually what I took from the scale system, because I used the scale based method first. I just
Mm.
sang a scale for you earlier. Obviously, I know it, right? I don't train that at all, but I did train it in the beginning, in the very beginning, because that was the first thing I learned from the book, like a scale, like learn a scale.
And
And
also,
I think it's about,
yeah, before I
sorry.
forget, most natural singers learn the way you are advocating for.
Yes, and that's part of my story as well.
They don't learn to
If we
sing
get time,
scales. All the
yeah,
great,
if we get
a
time,
lot of the great singers didn't learn by singing scales. They just learned by singing songs. So, in that respect, I'm very much on board with you, and you're obviously making a
yeah.
completely fair point.
Now here is where, thank you a lot for saying that. Um, you know how I was lucky because I grew up with with two siblings that were natural singers, and I have another sibling who's not. He was like me. So it's me, and then the other non-natural, and then two naturals came 10 years later. My parents had kids 10 years later. So they were kind of like my children because they were much younger than me. They were like babies, and I was 10, 11, and I used to look after them. So I actually got to watch them grow and saw how they learn. And that had a big part in my system. That played a big part in me developing my system and my ideas because I noticed that they knew nothing of scales. They knew nothing of theory, yet they learned to sing stunningly. And that further drove me to be like, well, what are they doing to get better? Because they do practice. They just practice differently. So
Mm.
what are they doing? So anyway, we'll come back to that. What was I saying before you cut in? Yeah,
You took
the
a
middle
mid.
ground.
Yeah.
The middle ground. So the middle ground, the thing that I took from when I learned scales, here's what I took. I took the idea that you repeat things a lot. So that's the first thing I took. Okay. And I took the idea that you go up and down in key to train range and to train ear. So I use the up and down in key thing to train now to train range. But instead of going and going up in key, that wasn't right. But instead of going up in key in the scale, I go up in key in the actual phrase that you intend to learn. So let's say I love to just be like really practical with this. So I'll just put a quick example
No,
to
it's
show.
great. It's great. I like this.
Um, let's say, because sometimes I explain something, but people don't really understand what I mean unless I show you. So let's say we're going to do this. Uh, it sounds like a scale exercise almost. It's like a triplet. Um, to
Yeah.
love, it's a bit high for now for the morning. I just woke up. To love. So the way I would train it, actually, let's take an easier one that's just one note or something like that. So this is a B flat. Okay. So without the run, it's the B flat. So what I would do is I take that, and here's what I stole from the scales. Here's the middle ground, right? I'm not just going to sing that over and over. I'm going to treat it like the scale-based training. I'm going to drop the key down to a comfortable key, let's say 9, so it serves as a warm-up as well. Fears away, throw your fears away. Do a rep or two, move up, down 8. Throw your fears away. Hey, it's sounding a lot like the scale exercises, except I'm doing it with a phrase, not with scale. Because now we're talking about the actual goal. I'm getting closer to the goal because I'm using the actual phrase instead of using a scale. That's going to work. The scale is going to work my B flat. Definitely. It's going to work my entire range. But there's something missing. And that's the actual phrasing, the actual intervals, the actual word, the vowels, etc. Your fears away. Keep working up. Oh, your fears away. I'll do it slower than this normally, but you get my fears away. And here now, when you get to the hard point, you can work on the volume. So you call it compression. I don't know. We can talk about that if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like it's a volume thing when you call it light, leaning in more, etc. So
Yeah. However you want to
lean.
describe it.
Yeah. So I would like to go. What way? So I'm intentionally not being loud there.
Mm.
Way I can do it like that, right? I can do it mid, I can do it really quiet. So here's where we start to go. We be careful so we don't put too much weight. I like that word you use. You use weight. I took that from you. You don't put too much weight when it's a new note, when it's in a difficult area, because that's when you can pop because you're putting too much weight. So you lean back a bit, make it lighter. You control the squeeze, as you call it, so that it's teaching that new note, that new area, so your voice will gradually stretch as you're getting into the more difficult zone. So that's where we meet. But what I do is I use the song to do it. That's the difference. So now
I like that, and
so
you know what I like about what you're doing as well is you're not treating as you sing higher in the scale. You're not treating any of the notes differently. you're just treating them the same way.
Yeah,
So like you say, it's not like I'm going for the higher
yeah.
note now. It's like no, I just sit there and hit it all the same
So
angle.
exactly, nice. Yeah. So let me show you now. I'll go all the way up so you can hear my point where I start where it gets difficult. Uh, Particularly because this is early morning for me.
Mm.
I don't normally train range in the morning. Like I normally train like falsetto instead of chest range. But this will show what will happen now as I get higher. Feels away. See how I modify it so it's not too much weight.
Yeah.
Feels away. Now, like pitch, rhythm, and volume are like a subset of the range element. That's how I would kind of term it.
Mm.
So I'm training my range, but pitch, rhythm, and volume all have to be paid attention to within this, and they all have to be accurate, and you can modify them. So like sometimes I'll slow it down, so I'm really accurate, or usually I will always slow it down actually, to say 75%, so that I'm really accurate on every note, and then I develop stamina more than I actually need, so that when I go to hit the song, it sounds easy
Yeah.
because
This
I
is
can
great.
actually hold it for longer than I need to.
Yeah.
So
You go ahead.
so yeah, if I'll continue to the end and then down two now. Away, throw your fears away. Down one. Way. Now original key. Throw your fears away. I'm getting a bit hard there. You can
It's
see
okay.
that that's like the new area. So that's where you go, okay, there's kind of my limit. I'll try again. If it's kind of hard every time, then my limit is like that was original key. So my limit will be down three, down two. That's where I should train. So I build the lower foundation up and then it will gradually stretch
Well,
by
yeah.
training
It's
yeah,
once you lose
just
the.
lower
Yeah.
so that I can do the middle ground thing, which is do a couple reps there. Because if I don't do a couple reps there, I'm not really doing anything new. It's just like singing the song. But here's the
Mm.
middle ground thing where it's the training, where it's like kind of like scales, where I'm going to treat that like an exercise and I'm going to find the area where the exercise will be most effective. So that's the first step. Train all the way through. It's like the warm up kind of thing. Find the limit, then go down to where the limit is, go down just a bit under the limit and then train there. And then that gets stronger. And then try to stretch that up again after you've done a couple reps there. So
Yeah.
when I say train there, I mean do like 5 reps there or something, 4 or 5 reps, then go up a rep and make sure you're doing rest reps in between where you're just like listening, like I call them listening reps or marking reps, where you do this. It's like you're marking it out. So it gives your voice a rest between reps because range is so demanding. It's good to take like a few seconds rest between reps sometimes, depending on how hard it is.
Mm.
And you're doing marking, which improves your ear. So you're making sure you're listening. What am I supposed to be doing? Not just singing over the song at full volume, not really paying attention to all the details.
I like this
So
because often
yeah,
you do pick up on more
I'm done.
detail. No, it's good. You do pick up on more detail when you listen and you're not trying to sing along a lot of the time. There's so much good stuff in what you've just explained and demonstrated. What I really liked was this idea of finding where your technical limit is, and that's different for everyone, and just pulling back a little bit. Because you're right, as soon as you start to lose the coordination and it gets kind of loses a bit of grip, however you want to describe it, if you come down a little bit, that's where your sweet spot's going to be right then, because you
Yeah,
can really engage the muscles to their fullest and you can really kind of hold on to the coordination and really get stuck into it, because everyone's going to lose coordination at some point in their range, no matter how good you
exactly.
are, because the
Yeah,
muscles can only, they're only so strong, your vocal cords are only going to stretch so far before at some point the muscles are going to say I can't, and that varies from day to day, from singer to singer, depending on your voice type, etc. But if you can get to that sweet spot where the muscles are really engaging as much as they can, and then you are pushing gently on that boundary each day, then you've got a chance of actually developing your range in the right way, rather than in the push that so many singers who don't understand how to do this correctly,
Yeah.
they go into the wrong, they go way beyond that limit, and they sit there and yell for 10 minutes and they think that's going to help, and it's not, because the
Yeah.
muscles, once you go into a yell, the right muscles actually start to let go. They don't really hold on as much as they need to, just to stay in that coordination. Yeah, that's a good thing you've shown, because it really does show that middle ground, because you're kind of right in, you're doing scales, but you also got a bunch of vowels you're having to do, and you're bringing it up in keys half step at a time. What is that app that you're using out of interest?
Amazing slowdowner. I've been using it for
Ah,
10 years. It is the entire reason my voice has changed the way it has.
yeah, my friend recommended this.
Yeah.
I will get it. Let me just write it down. Um,
I use it for every single training session
and
that
one,
I do for my own training, and I use it with all my students. It's the most powerful tool
yeah,
because it slows down music so at such a high quality, and you can hear when you can hear every detail, people change because people can't hear the details. So when they slow them down, they hear them. And onto your point about the push, when people are pushing too much and they're yelling, etc. Now, if you're doing the song, you're more likely to be doing the goal, but you can still train wrong. Like you're just saying, right? That you can be
yeah,
pushing in the wrong spot too often. So what I love to do is put such a strong emphasis on accuracy of the pitch, rhythm, and volume. Because if they're in place, you're gonna sound beautiful, even if your range is small. You're gonna sound
yeah.
beautiful,
And
and
even if
then your
you
range will
even
stretch.
yeah,
That beauty will. You got to have the beauty, and then stretch that beauty. But ideally, you're working on everything at the same time. You're working on range and the beauty of the pitch, etc. But did you notice, like when I went high, I'm not like just yelling. I'm trying to actually sound really in the sweet spot of the pitch, volume, and rhythm, not just the sweet spot of the B flat necessarily.
yeah, I
So my
understand.
mind, yeah, my mind is really trying to be artistic because when pitch, rhythm, volume are there, the art sounds right, you
Yeah,
know?
or even when the
So
balance is there, when you have that sense of flow, and I made a video about this on Sunday, I think it's absolutely should be the most, the main basic building block of a voice needs to be, does it kind of float and sound pretty, or does it kind of sound pushed and strained?
exactly.
Because
Yeah.
if you can start making that distinction and start filtering towards sounding good,
Yeah.
you're gonna go in the right direction inevitably. But if you aren't making any distinction between when it sounds pushed and wrong, and when it sounds kind of like it spins and it just sits there, like
Yeah.
if you aren't making that distinction, you're just never going to sound good, because every professional singer that's earning a living, they just, like you said earlier on in this, you was like, 90 to 100% of it has to be right for it to start
Pitch
sounding
accuracy.
professional.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even if they're only singing in an octave and a half range, like Craig David doesn't sing above a G sharp
mm.
on his recordings. He does in falsetto, but he never sings, he doesn't do chest above that range.
Mm.
But his songs are like silky smooth. I was checking his car next door when her parents went out. She phone say, "Hey boy."
Yeah,
It's like silky, It's like every note. Oh, but he never goes above a G or whatever a G sharp, So it's
that's the thing.
range.
He's got the basics right, and the basics are more important than how high you can sing or how powerful you can sing, like
Yeah,
no doubt.
and I totally recommend. Like, I want to sing high C. I want to sing a high B flat. I want to, and I can now. Like I've been developing. I didn't just want to be like, oh, Craig David's here, so I'm cool. No, like I have other artists that I like that are better in with their range than Craig, and equal with everything else that Craig can do.
Mm.
So I see it like a weakness that he can't do that, but I don't see it like he's no longer an artist or something. You got to look at the whole picture. Like the whole picture, it's like really, I was saying with a student the other day, he's like a super advanced pianist currently learning to sing.
Mm.
It's more like a grid, and we've got you. The more of the grid that's full, the more you are like incredible. So the most incredible artists like a Mariah Carey or a Whitney Houston or the Boyz II Men singer Wanya Morris, one of my favorite singers. Um, the more the more of that grid that's full, and each the grid is like pitch accuracy, rhythm, falsetto, range, etc. The more of those things that those boxes that you've checked or filled in, the more amazing you sound. But if there's a little bit of those boxes missing, you still sound pretty damn great. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like, yeah, it's levels. It's not black and white. Oh, he can't do vibrato, so he sucks. No, not really. Like
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran doesn't have a smooth vibrato, but Ed Sheeran's runs, falsetto, his blend from chest to falsetto, and his pitch accuracy are stunning. So
Yeah, he's no doubt got a lot of strengths. Yeah.
yeah, so
And I think,
you can't say black and white. Oh, he's shit because he can't do that. Really, he's like he's got 90% of what the most incredible singers have.
yeah.
That's
Like
that's how I look.
once you start comparing professionals, you're starting to split hairs more and more. And you're absolutely right. It's a big grey spectrum from, absolute beginner up to professional, and it's infinite, the layers the layers of ability. And like it's just a never ending grey spectrum. And uh the stuff I work on now with my own singing is stuff that is not, it's real basic stuff. A lot of the time for me, it's like just vowel transitions in chest, or kind of towards, like, around middle C area, like around the area, vowel transitions, like, and things like that, which I didn't learn doing scales, and so I have to learn with application, and things like that. To be frank, a lot of the stuff that I've had to learn with application is actually kind of advocating a lot for your ideas, because there's a certain point where you can only learn XYZ with application. You can't learn it with scales. There's just too many.
Yeah,
There's too many combinations of consonants and vowels at different volumes and different types of quality in the sound, that scales can only take you so far. Like, beyond that,
yeah,
you have to just, basically everything becomes application beyond a certain point. Now, I'll still do scales, but I do a lot less than I used to. I'll probably spend and most of the time, if I'm going to do, when I sing each day, probably 90% of it will be application. But I've kind of gone from, when I started, I did a lot more scale stuff, and transition now to where I'm able to do a lot more application. So I do have
yeah,
a sense of, I think, depending on where you're at, you might tailor things differently. But
yeah,
I mean, I found as well that some singers will get more excited about singing songs, for example, and that excitement helps them learn. Because even though a scale or some kind of really kind of abstract functional type of exercise might help them, latch onto something, it's kind of dry, and at the
yeah,
end of the day, singing's more fun than something that's very functional and abstract. And I have to find this balance for people, because I get, probably more so than most coaches, get into like really functional sounds that are, to most people listening, like, how does that even apply to singing? And unless you understand some of the real specific mechanics, things I'm talking about, it's like, how does that apply? And I think
yeah,
singing songs is fun, and that's the thing. And it being fun is like half the battle. And if we're going back to what we were talking about earlier, developing a good work ethic, committing to
yeah.
practice each day. If it's fun, you're going to be much, like 1,000% more likely to do it.
Exactly. And let me show you something. Talking about consistency and fun. You see that song that I had loaded up in this?
Hmm?
Now, here's my fun. Here's my joy in life. Okay. Every day I'm charged up to practice, and I do practice. One, because I found the strategy to create to create exercises out of the songs. So that was the main battle. The main battle was, how do I approach my learning? I didn't, because I had the experience with the scales and stuff, and I had a teacher for like 3 lessons, and it was 50 minutes of scales and begging to do a song at the end for 10 minutes, almost fainting when I did the scales, because the scales were at a high tempo, and they're just recorded off the CD, etc. And uh, intuitively, I felt that it was wrong. This was 12 years ago. So how's looking at a CD with a bunch of scales on it and kind of different sound kind of exercises or whatever, the fun of that compared to the fun of looking at this? Let me just show you. So what I do is I press the save button, and these are all the loops that I have saved of all the
Mm.
different difficult sections of the songs. So let's say I click one of them that I've saved. and that's got like a super hard run. Take it away, yeah. It's got like a super hard run there, and then it's loaded up. I just drop the speed. Take it away, yeah. And the top note is the B flat, so I can drop it down if I want to. Take it away, yeah. Something like that. So, and then anything else? I'll bring up anything else in there. Try again. So whatever I want, I can bring up a verse and practice the verse. Open up, let down your guard. Drop the speed and work on the accuracy. Open up, let down your guard.
One of
So,
my
like,
one of my
like how
favorites.
much? Just
Sorry,
to
go
say,
ahead.
sorry, that's my program, and I've got
Yeah,
hundreds of songs in here, and every song has loops marked out that I've marked out that are difficult sections, things that I can't currently do professionally. If I can't do it as professionally as the artist, I mark it out as a loop, and that is my training course, made my own training course. And then now the hard part is the strategy. How do you use that in a strategic way? And that's the middle ground part where I make it into sort of an exercise, do reps, slow it down enough, change the key enough, change the volume enough. That's where you probably need someone. That's why people need us, because they don't know how to do that with it, whether it's with a scale or with a song. They don't know how to do
yeah.
that
Well, and
because
they
they
don't
can't
know
recognize.
when they're making a mistake or when they're not a lot of the
Exactly.
time. So
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of the time you're just a filter for nope, that's not right. Yes, that's right. Nope, that's not right. Yes, that's right. And
Yeah.
that's a large part of the job in a lot of ways.
So that's how I stay consistent, man. That's how I've stayed consistent, and for 10 years or so. But it wasn't until I figured out the strategy of how to use that effectively, like how to structure my rep kind of training, how many reps to do, like bodybuilding, they tell you got to do, 10 reps, 3 sets, and you got to do like 3 exercises per body part, etc. There's a system, and the system will yield guaranteed results, with training, with progression, etc. You will definitely see results. So I didn't figure that out until about 3 or 4 years ago, how to use it in that way. So I knew I could slow down stuff. I knew I could change the key, but I didn't know how do I take something that I can't do, like a fast vibrato or a fast run or a phrase that has like Craig David phrase, super quick flow. I was checking this guy next door when a parent, and how do I work on that and get progressively better? And then I thought, why don't I do it like I do it for guitar? Like you set a metronome and you gradually get faster, right? What?
Yeah,
But you do it for like 10 reps or 5 reps, or you have a time. Instead of reps, you have like a time. You do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Why don't I do the same thing with vocals? And then gradually I adopted that system that I was doing for guitar for vocals. And now that I've got all these songs laid out and all these loops laid out, motivation is taken care of and strategy is taken care of. So now I actually train every day for about half an hour at least, without I don't have to push myself to do it because it's just so fun and I know exactly what to do.
yeah. I mean,
Yep.
I find it as long as I am. Once you understand that you're getting better and that you're developing a skill, for me, that's the kind of key to motivation in terms of it helps so much when you see the results and you see that you are getting better and you're getting more skilled at something versus oh, I'm either good or I'm not, which is typically the starting point for a lot of us. As naive as that sounds, that's where I started. One of my favorite singers, who kind of blew my mind when I asked him about some of this stuff, one of the first things he said to me was, when I practice, a lot of the time I will slow something down really slow and do it very, very slowly until it's good, and then I'll speed it back up. And kind of really exactly what you're saying. And that's something that when you slow it down, you give yourself so much more time to get it right. It helps a lot. Obviously, you have to ultimately get it quick, but this idea of it's just another way of simplifying it. Because when you've got all that time, you can get more into the details, and you've got all that flexibility and that kind of wiggle room to kind of give it your best shot, and then once it's accurate, bring the speed up. And this is very much like a lot of guitar players talk about. They do it nice and smooth and slow, and then speed it up. This type of thing.
Even for chords, like it's the same when you learn chords, right? You have to go one finger at a time.
Yeah, one little
But
bit at a time.
when I watch you now, you're like, bang, 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 bang.
Yeah,
But
it's
when you learned
faster.
it, it was like, and then then you had to work on the getting the sound right, not touching the other string. It's like, well, that's what singing a note is like. You're singing the note, and you're like here, you're wavering off in here, and that's only one note, and you're trying to sing 300 notes correctly.
Yeah, and I think the muscles in your vocal cords, like they're so tiny. I mean, you like the muscles in your fingers are like giant in comparison to what you're trying to figure out in here. Um, let's let's talk about this, because in terms of your channel and a lot of your teaching is more stylistically focused, shall we say, than mine.
Song based, I want to call it,
Yeah, yeah,
not style. Yeah,
yeah. But
song.
you typically more R&B focused, I'd say, than
Oh
you
yeah,
are on
yeah.
others. Yeah.
Genre. With that
And
genre, yes, definitely.
yeah, I'm kind of, I guess, in some sense, style specific. Like, I kind of typically gravitate towards singer-songwriter types.
Yeah.
If people ask me about distortion and metal, this type of style, like, I can give them some ideas, and there's definitely a lot of crossover. But then there are things that Ken Tamplin can do, for example, that I can't. Whereas, and that kind of works both ways. But there's this. I've always tried to try and stay away from style as much as I can, because I like the idea of trying to pick away at the fundamentals that all singers need. But I feel like in a lot of ways, however you come at this, you end up having to get better at the basics regardless. And it's just a case of how much you break it down versus how much you try and learn it kind of in chunks, I guess you'd say, and this type of thing. But let's ask the question I've put here. How much do you think that there's value in, kind of working on kind of technical functional stuff in isolation versus, all application and this type of thing? Do you feel like there is value in, I mean, some of the stuff I do where we've kind of got very functional SLS exercises, like this kind of this type of exercise, which, does it sound pretty? No. Does it sound nice? But like, there's a sense of function behind it. Like, do you feel like that you don't really need to bother with any of that? Do you feel like it has no value, or do you feel like you can see some value in it? And do you use any of that type of thing in your own teaching?
No, I don't use any of that in my teaching. Zero. Do I think it has value? I think it distracts from the goal, because I think what's really happening is that these teachers that have taught you that technique,
Hmm?
they don't know of the way that I'm presenting. They don't know that you can take it. They're not sure. Maybe they don't know how to, or they've never thought about it, or they've had teachers all their life that taught them a different way. It's all about, how you grow up with this, how you learn the knowledge. They've had someone tell them that this is the way that you approach this problem of the voice. Whereas I didn't have a strong indoctrination in that. I didn't have anyone that sang like that around me. I didn't know people that went to lessons and teachers. I didn't I didn't have that sort of stuff anywhere like in my mind. So when I opened the book, when I said I want to learn to sing, and I bought Singing for Complete Idiots or whatever, the
Mm.
Complete Idiots Guide. And as I was using that, hold on, my battery. Okay. As I was using that, I was sort of like, I didn't have no one in person to pressure me to practice that way. So I guess my mind was free enough to see what was valuable and throw away what wasn't. So what was valuable in there that I wasn't doing was like some placement. So sometimes I used to sing like nasally. So I used to be like, let's go next on, like a little bit in there, sort of that feeling. So the book talked about placement, like going, now I don't now looking back at it, I don't like the way they taught it. I created a better way than that way, like a song-based way to teach it. But they used to teach, like they used to teach exercises like that,
Mm.
and it did help me to find what I needed to find. But now I figured out how to do it with songs instead. Um, and so, what else was good about the book was it taught you how to say vowels correctly, like in the English way, as in how how singers sing with an American accent. I know you sometimes vary that a bit, but the singers that I listen to, like Craig David, even though he's a Pom, he sings with an American accent. Like you can't tell the difference between him and like a Boyz II Men or some American
Yeah.
singers,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I
even
know what you mean.
Adele, like she sings mostly with that standard Americanized kind of accent. Whereas Ed Sheeran, sometimes he'll say, "I saw you," and like he'll say things
Mostly
like
English, yeah, yeah.
he's native. But
Yeah.
no, I
It's
mean Ed is an exception where he'll say some things in his own accent,
oh right, I see
like
what you mean. And then
particular
he'll
words. Yeah, yeah, particular words. So
yeah,
so
it's funny this actually because I often think about this because when I imitate other singers, I find myself using their vowel selection, and then I'm thinking, well, am I in their accent or my accent? Does this sound contrived or not? And it's actually hard to
yeah,
know. But
give me 1 second. I'm just gonna put my power plug in.
yeah,
Yeah, I can hear you. Keep going. Yeah.
sweet man. Um, I'll wait for you to come back.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That point of keep going.
Let me just so in regards to what you're saying about the functional technique and stuff, I would say
Yeah. Can I just
I
continue with that? Almost.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So so what I did was I took what works, which is the middle ground we talked about before, which is changing the key by going up and down to train your range. Definitely works. But all I did was use songs instead. Um, they talked about like the book wanted you to learn sight reading for pitch and stuff like that. And it would sort of teach you a song via the notes written on the staff
I
instead of
understand.
by
Yeah,
ear, and it
it's
might
not
give a
really.
CD.
It's what
Yeah,
classical. It's what classical singers use when they read music, so they need to be able to read
yeah,
and sing. Not so much needed for pop. Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, oh, and that one stumped me because I was like, how can I train my notes without learning to read? Because my favorite singers don't read music. They don't read sheet music. What? Why? Something's wrong. So that made me think something was wrong. It was like alarm bells early on, right? And I didn't have no one in person to tell me, no, no, this is the way you must do it. Like, so I was kind of free, right? So I when I learned an instrument, that was the catalyst because the instrument book had a different approach. The instrument book taught you how to read chords, and tablature was much simpler. And so I guess
Yeah. One.
I used tablature, and I thought, and so I'm trying to think how I got to the E training. Oh yeah, that's right. Because I didn't read music, and I didn't want to invest all the time to learn to read music. I thought I knew I could buy the sheet music for the songs that I liked, but some songs didn't have sheet music. So I was like, how do I learn this? And then somewhere in the guitar book, it focused on going slowly to learn guitar pieces. And I thought, what about if I go slowly for voice? Maybe I can slow the voice down. So then I looked into software that slows voice down. And then I found Amazing Slowdowner, the desktop version. This is before smartphones. And I downloaded that. I slowed the voice down, and then I realized I could hear everything. I could hear all the notes in the song more clearly. I could hear the runs, and then I had time to go to the piano and figure out what they were, and I could loop them. And I was like, oh, I could just learn like this. And then I gradually developed that. It's sort of like an ear training thing. And then I noticed that that's what, as I grew up, as my siblings grew up, I noticed that's what they were doing. They would slow things down, except they didn't use a tool to do it. They used their brain because their brain was intelligent enough through their natural gift, whatever you want to call it, was high enough in terms of pitch that they could self correct. And the way they self corrected was by stopping, looping, and slowing down and gradually speeding up. So they would take a section like, um, we belong together. So if there was a note that was off, we belong together, we belong together, and they might be flat, and then they'll fix that. We belong together, together. I'd watch them, and they'd naturally do that without assistance. I didn't
Yeah.
know how to do that. So my assistance was the application, was the app, and I would slow down on the app, and then I could hear it. It was slow enough for me to hear it. So that's where I started learning the idea that slowing down is actually one of the most powerful tools, because it will teach anyone, no matter their level. All you need to do is find the amount that you need to slow down. So the less your natural talent, the more you need to slow it down. You might need to extend the note out for 3 seconds for your brain to register that note. Whereas if I sang for my brother, who's incredibly talented, my 10-year younger brother, when I found the fastest runs in the world for him, because his ear was so good, he could hear those notes. He could hear them clearly, even at full speed. He didn't need to slow it down. When I'd slow it down for him to like what I slowed it down to, like 25% or 50%, he'd get angry at me. Why are you slowing it down? It's so annoying. He'd say, he goes, I can hear it. I can hear it. And then I realized he could hear it, and I realized I was wrong to try to train him like I train myself. So I realized that he didn't need to slow down, but his ear was better than his voice. So he could hear faster than he could execute. So all he needed was actually to slow it down to maybe 75%, because that's where his execution limit was.
Okay.
So he
Yeah,
would
yeah.
slow. So say he's going, yay, yay, yay. So he's learning that run. For him, his execution, he could hear it at 100. He doesn't need to slow it down, but he needed to slow it down to sing it technically correct at 75. Now he could do that himself manually, or he could do it using the app.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
Yeah.
the thing about what you're saying is probably more than half of my learning is exactly as you've described right there. Um, and and this is where we have huge amounts of common ground. But I can't think of many videos that I've made where I cover this type of practice where you breaking
You don't
phrases
talk
down.
about it. Yeah,
I
you
mean,
don't talk about
some
it. And you
yeah.
talked about it once. Once you said, oh, I don't only practice scales. I practice my songs like later for an hour. I practice application, you call it, for
Mm.
like an hour or 2 hours or whatever, like every so often, like once
Yeah,
every day or once every third day
I
or
think
second day or
you,
whatever it
you
is.
give people an inaccurate picture. I think I mean I'm doing some application stuff recently where I'm showing people, okay, this is kind of what's happening and stuff, but I do think there's probably a lot of value in a video where I am just going over one phrase, for example, and breaking it down for people and showing people, okay,
Yeah.
because that thing that you demonstrated with one phrase and kind of looping back quickly and trying it again and again and again, like this is where my bread and butter is in terms of application. Um,
See,
and
I didn't know that.
yeah.
I've never heard you say that. I've never seen you do that. So like why have you actually not done that?
Oh, and
You never
videos.
thought, yeah, have
Well,
you never
yeah, it's
thought of it?
funny. Well, it's funny because I think there's so much to cover with singing that it's easy to you kind of can get you it's hard to
Do you think
remember.
you have to fit the mold? Do you think that you have to fit a certain mold? This is what a singing teacher teaches.
No,
Is that what
it's
it is?
more
Because
this. I
you learn
think
from Brett Manning or whatever.
it's more this. What it is when I learnt guitar, it's the same thing. I learnt in the same way. I think what it is largely is quite a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. I already knew about when I started to sing. And what's happened is because I knew about it and I took it for granted, I never really valued it as much as we are here right here talking about it. And because the thing I lacked most as a singer was really basic skills. And so typically, because I was a
What do you mean
guitar
by
player,
basic? Sorry.
like
What's an
I
actual?
couldn't sing anything really above middle C. As
Okay,
in,
range. Okay.
I I couldn't really stretch out into head voice. That took me a long time to get to.
Right.
I had no concept of closing the chords together different amounts, this type of thing, or creating different sounds, however you want to describe it.
Mhm.
And so when I came into singing, that method of practicing I already had totally understood. And so I think what's happened is I kind of take it for granted in the sense of I kind of assume everybody must know this. And I think because I knew it when I started singing,
Yeah.
and I think it's probably as much that as anything else.
Okay.
I
Now
tend
I
to
understand.
I tend to focus on things that I lacked so much of when I started singing,
Which
and
is high range. Okay.
well, and
Now I get why you focus so
just
much on that.
I already had this real clear sense in my mind. I think this is one of the problems that teachers like myself have, who were guitar players before singers. The problem that we have is when we came into singing, we had a lot of musical knowledge and a lot of at least basic musical knowledge, intuitive, that we learnt young. We go into singing and we have to cover all this technical stuff, and we assume that all of that stuff that we learnt before, we kind of disregard it, and we don't remember. Okay, if someone's just coming into singing and they're not a good instrumentalist first, they've got to learn all this. They need to learn practice methods where they are breaking things down and and all of this application stuff. And I think that probably one of my biggest challenges as a coach is remembering that a lot of the application stuff that I didn't need to learn as a singer, I have to teach people that, and I have to get it across to people in a probably a way that I haven't up to this point so much. This has actually been a really good conversation in this regard, because it's kind of this particular idea that I've just communicated to you, I haven't really communicated it that clearly before.
Hmm.
So
Oh, nice.
it's a good thing to understand, and I think that there's it's very good.
Right.
Where are we at? I think
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
covered a lot
So,
of stuff that
so
I've wrote down here. Have you got anything like that you want to kind of cover or close
yeah,
up on?
yeah. Two things. I just want to clarify with you said if I give any value to the like that kind of um, what did I want to say? Yeah, you will train the right sounds that you want and the right range with the technique that I'm using. You don't need to use you don't need to use those melodies or those arpeggios or whatever you want to call them, right?
Mm.
Vocalizers, etc. You don't need to use that. You can use like how I just use the app. You can take students up with that gradually. And it's actually, and it's what we talked about before. It's the right pitch, rhythm there, and then you can fix them within the context of that song, and then they'll feel like they're making progress towards the actual song instead of making progress generally in their range. And then when they go and sing their song, they're like, oh, I think it's better this way. There's no I think, it's 100% for sure, because during the lesson, in that 30-40 minutes you spend on that phrase, like you spent with that guy, imagine you're doing that every time on phrases. You're fixing them as much as possible in that song, and they know they're getting better at that song. um, so all the skills, the stuff that you're teaching without the songs can be done in the songs. That's my point. So it's not that I don't see the value of what you're actually doing, because I know what you're doing. You're creating range. That's valuable. You're creating control of volume, control of compression, control of that holding on, that thing you're talking about, like the grip or those kind of terms you use, balance, etc. I get what you're trying to create, and that is valuable, of course. But the way you go about creating it, I would use the song instead. That's it.
Okay.
That's a more clear answer. I'm not going to say it's not valuable, because it is
Yeah.
valuable, because I know what you're doing, but it's the way that it's done. Where is my contention? It's like I wouldn't do it that way, because you just took all the fun out of training, and you're actually kind of slightly removed from the goal,
You are
which is
certainly.
sounding like the actual artist in that song, in that phrase.
Well, you're certainly removed, one step removed from singing, definitely. And the question is, I mean, I would say, for me at least, that it's always a question of how much can we simplify something. And I look at it mostly as, like you say, I don't necessarily distinguish between scales and songs that much in a sense, but I do distinguish between, if I've got a set of notes on one vowel and one consonant, executing that's typically going to be easier and simpler than with a bunch of vowels and a bunch of
Yeah,
consonants on the same set of notes, just like you demonstrated
yeah,
with your and I guess in some sense you are going to scales in a sense, because
Yeah.
what that phrase is, when you demonstrated, simplifying it down to just, maybe on one vowel or this type of thing, really at that point you kind of are on a scale, but you're just not on you're on a unique scale, should we say, or a scale that will
Well,
just happens to be within that particular song.
well, I wouldn't
So
call it a scale. I'll just call it the note that I'm working on. So all I'm
yeah,
doing is, or the interval. So
yeah,
I'm just simplifying. That's all I'm actually doing.
yeah,
So that one that I was doing earlier. Now there's a lot happening there, right? So th- throw your fears away. Now you can take out the vibrato. We can take out the aware and just
yeah.
leave the hey. Becomes eh, and we can just do simplest. That is the way of doing what you're just saying right now.
Mm.
That takes away that justification to continue using the scales, because you can simplify it in that way.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm
It's even
saying,
simpler. It's one
yeah,
note.
if
Oh,
I guess
sorry,
what
one.
I guess what I'm saying is, at that point when you simplify it to that degree, it just becomes this semantic distinction between, is this a scale or is this a melody or a run? Because once you get down to one vowel, if I go na 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 na, or I have a song that goes like, you could call it a scale or a part of a song, but I think the key thing is the coach and the singer able to break it down and simplify it enough that they can put it into easily digestible chunks, and then
Yeah,
rebuild it to the point where it becomes the
yeah.
music. And this goes
So
back to
that's
the middle ground.
that's
I
how I
guess,
would do it. Yeah,
yeah, I guess what I'm
yeah,
saying is that I think, in a lot of ways we kind of really we're trying to get the same thing across to people. It's just we've kind of got slightly different way of transitioning between different things and simplifying things down. But I think broadly speaking, we're in agreement in terms of, you've got to find a way to make things simpler and break things down into smaller chunks. Whether you do that by
yeah,
slowing parts of a song down, or singing, less amount of notes in a particular section of a song.
yeah.
Whether you do it by getting rid of all the different consonants and vowels and just trying it on one particular sound. However you do it, the thing you're trying to get at is, you're trying to make it simple enough that the student can execute it, like you said earlier, very precisely or well, and then add bits of complexity, whether it's speed it back up or add in the words, whatever it is, to where there's just enough
Always the
that
key.
there's
Yeah.
just enough that they can still latch on to doing it right. But it's a challenge, each layer of difficulty you add. And this
Yes.
kind of goes back to what you were saying with when you were pushing range, find the limit, pull it back. Like, we're trying to find the right limits for students and helping them to really kind of grind away right on that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully that makes some sense anyway.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yeah. Like I've been doing song bass now for years, so I've really developed my ideas, and I know how to deal with a lot of different kinds of problems when it comes to my own personal development in singing, and with students, different kinds of problems, because students don't have the same problem, like we said before, that we have. Like I get students that, I mean, I used to be out of key sometimes before when I was younger, but I get people that are out of key at a much worse level than I was when I started. But I've learned how to deal with them.
Mm.
So like that takes a lot has gone into that. I've done a lot of trial and error to figure out how to teach these these ones that are really, like, they don't understand what, like, how to match a note. It's
Mm.
very it's
Well,
very like,
that's
whoa.
the
And
great thing. The great thing I got from this conversation actually is that I really have a sense that a lot of your ideas are well fleshed out,
yeah,
because
yeah.
when we've
I
gone
spent a
into
lot of practical time on this.
when we've gone into the details, you have been able to get across to me a lot of the stuff that I talk about, and that's a great thing, because it means that you're understanding like the complexity underneath all of this, which is really what is the hardest challenge for coaches. And the thing that I found hardest is trying to
Yeah.
really understand the depth to this. It's easy in a sense to kind of understand things on the surface level, but when you say to me things like every student's different and everyone has like unique types of problems and stuff, this type of thing is easy. It's not commonly understood amongst a lot of the people that talk about this stuff, I'd say, as in this is more deeper stuff. There's a lot of more deep stuff we've covered today, which is a good thing, because it really helps people get at some of the real kind of nuts and bolts of what you're having to try and figure out as a singer, versus just, oh, I need to, I just put on a song and sing along and just expect that it's going to get better. No, you've got to really start thinking about things and really like get into some of the very small details of what is it that somebody's actually doing. And like you said earlier, people miss it. They don't see it until you point it out to them. And they're like, oh, okay. And then the light turns on for them.
It's that final. I love that. It's like that final product thing that we talked about. People see the final product, and maybe they hear a song, and the song goes quick. Lyrics go quickly. Monday, I took her for a drink. On Tuesday, we were making love. It happens quick, but you don't know what's actually going into that. We were making love by Wednesday. It's 11 notes. We were making love by Wednesday without the vibrato.
And
So
you've
that's
got all the
that's
vowels.
so much.
It's not just 11 notes though, is it? You've got the 11 notes, you've got the different vowels coming in, you've got the different consonants to deal with. You've got to keep it all floating and smooth and all that stuff. So it's a bunch of things. Yeah.
Yeah, the range that it's being done at, all these things. So it's really, 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 really complicated. Like for me to be able to pull that off that smooth has taken. It's an overall. I didn't just train that song, because you do other songs and it trains the same skill of matching notes, moving quickly between notes, etc. But overall, it's taken hundreds of hours to develop that. Minimum, several hundred hours minimum of perfect practice. Like I don't mean just singing my song. I don't count singing songs as practice. When I perform, that's not practice. That's different. Performance has nothing to do with practice. Like practice is like what you sit and do when you're doing scales. That's what I call practice. But I just don't do it with scales. I do it with songs. It's the only difference. But it doesn't sound like practice. I mean, it doesn't sound like performance.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a song. There was a school that says if someone walks by you and they can tell what you're practicing too fast. So it's like it's broken down. It's all these things. So when people see you pull, my point was, when people see you pull off, we were making love, and they think, oh, he knows the words, he's got the flow, he just does it. And then when they try to do it and they don't do it, because that phrase happens and it's finished within a couple of seconds, those words, it's like 5 seconds phrase, they think that, oh, in 5 seconds they should kind of execute it similarly. No, like that's taken dozens of hours to develop that, if not hundreds of hours to develop that ability. It's no different to when you see a gymnast do a triple somersault backflip thing in 5 seconds and then land. It's no different to that. You can't just jump and do that. But because people can speak words, they think that they should be able to do that
in a couple of seconds. But it's that's
where the disconnect is. This is like Olympic level shit that you're going to spend hundreds to thousands of hours on. And just because you know how to speak words doesn't mean you're going to learn how to sing. Doesn't mean you start feeling down on yourself because you don't sound amazing after a couple of goes or after even
a good analogy.
Like, come on, get real.
Yeah, a good analogy would be just because you can, jog around and do a handstand doesn't mean you can do gymnastics, and that's what people often expect. That's what talking to singing is in a lot of ways. But you're absolutely right. It's a hard skill. Like the more you get into singing, the more you realize, even if you've got some basic talent there, it's a lot of work and it's very, very challenging to get good at, because there's so little margin for error when you to sing at a professional level, like, yeah, you can make mistakes here and there, but the margin for error is very small. So you have to be like right like the vast majority of the time. If you're like off like 30% of the time, it sounds like garbage to people. Like so it's, you know, developing that consistency in the skill is like so tough. It takes time and
Yeah,
takes hours of work, because it's just muscle memory,
yeah,
and that needs to be just over and over and over in per, like you say, perfectly practiced, or practice, you know, very very accurately to become consistent. Thank you, because this would be interesting content for people, and it's been a bit different to some of the other ones I've done, certainly like different topics that we've covered, which is great. But
yeah.
yeah, thank you so much. I'll put a link to your channel in the description, and I'll also put a link to this app that you've spoken about, the amazing slow downer, is it
Yeah,
called?
actually, I've got a tutorial. I recommend you check it out.
Yeah,
And anyone watching can check it out. You go to rnbsinginglessons.com. So it's RN for Nelly.
yeah.
No, it's not an ampersand. So RN for Nelly B singinglessons.com. And on the top it says private lessons and prices. And down there I have the links to the apps for the Play Store and for the Apple version. And under that, I've got a free playlist that I've made. It's actually part of my singing course, but I've put it up there for free. So students and people can learn to use it before they actually do lessons. So they can be ready to go with that app. So it's just a playlist. They're only short, like 1 minute videos, and they just show you how to load a song, how to create a loop, how to use the slow down function, how to change the key, how to use the auto. There's auto increment settings as well. So you can auto increment speed, auto increment pitch, that kind of stuff. So it's really useful, and it's all under that rnbsinginglessons.com, under the first private lessons prices sort of section.
Awesome, man. I'll check
Yeah.
it out, and I will put a
Check it
link.
out. Yeah, it's only 10 minutes
Yeah,
worth, but it'll show you, like, it'll set
yeah.
you up.
I'll put links in the description. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
I'll see you in a bit, dude.
See ya.
Take care, man. Bye.